Hello and welcome to today's event, SAP Analytics Panel Discussion. Today's event is being recorded on behalf of Saberpoint. If you do not consent to being part of a recorded session, please disconnect your line at this time. The recording will be available at the same location you used to join today. To learn more about the ways you can participate in today's event, please click on the Messages button in the lower left corner of your screen. We encourage you to interact by using the Messages panel at any time to ask questions regarding content or to request support. Feel free to let us know if you are ready by sending us a message and select Send. We will do our best to answer all of your questions, but due to time constraints, we may not be able to answer all of them during the live event. If you experience any technical difficulties, please refresh your browser. If this does not resolve the issue, please send in a message and we will be happy to assist. Your feedback is important. At the end of the event, a few questions will appear on the left side of your viewing console. Enter your responses and select Submit to provide your feedback. And now I'd like to introduce your host, Ken Engel, Partner and Executive Vice President of Saberpoint. Ken, you have the floor.
Thanks so much, Jen. And to the audience out there, just profound thanks and gratitude for taking the time. I know you're all very busy and we're all scampering in 2021 to optimize our business, but hopefully this time today will be of value to all of you. As Jen mentioned, I'm Ken Engel. For anyone who doesn't know me out there, I'm the Executive Vice President of Saberpoint. We are the analytics partner for SAP, the gold partner, and very excited to bring this forum to you today. And with respect to the forum, I want to just say very different than your traditional and very formalized type of webinar. We're keeping it very informal today, really just a panel group who really hopefully can bring some insight along experts from SAP directly and our company. So hopefully, if you have any questions, please hold them to the end or just put them over in the chat box. More than happy to get your input. Without further ado, let me introduce this panel that has joined us today. First, I want to introduce SAP's Principal Solutions Advisor, Robin Williams, not to be confused with the late famous comedian. Robin, thank you for joining. Second, I'd like to introduce a person who is actually I've known for quite some time, longstanding SAP customer, the CFO at a company called DirectRx from the pharma industry. Peter, thanks for joining today. Peter Licata. Next, all the way in from South Carolina, just want to introduce the Senior Systems Analyst at AGY. AGY is a manufacturing company specializing in fiberglass, and really, really privileged to have David Hamilton here today. David, thanks for joining. And lastly, from our industry clients, a name that many of you will be very familiar with, Union Bay. Very, very privileged to have the IT manager of this retail and apparel company. Eugene, can't thank you enough for coming in from Seattle. Great. With that, and if you'll permit me, let me jump into some questions that I actually have put together. And I think if I can, Robin, let me start with you, since once again, you bring really the perspective from SAP, who's the actual analytics platform provider. Robin, just as an opening question, we're all kind of going through some challenging economic times. Businesses are really leaning on analytics now more than ever to make these critical decisions, especially to navigate through this uncharted time. What, from your opinion, should the customers be looking for when they are searching for a viable analytics solution? Robin?
That's a great question, Ken. I talk to a lot of customers, and really the first advice that I give is looking for a solution that's really going to help you accelerate your time from data to insight. So one of the first ways that you can do that is by selecting a cloud solution, right? Something that's going to help you, circumvent all of the time spent in installation, configuration, or even things like provisioning hardware to be able to get to your solution, right? So you want to be able to move more quickly than that. But even as importantly, you need to look at a solution that's going to help you solve for analytics across the full spectrum, right? So there's a lot of questions that you're asking of your data. And, traditional views of how we do that have really changed. It used to be that we really looked at a solution to answer the questions on what has happened, traditional BI. And really what we're finding is that people want to ask more questions. They want to understand the why. Why is something happening? What's making this up? What could happen, right? Being able to apply predictive type capabilities to that to understand, if things continue along this trajectory, what is going to be the outcome? And then even more importantly, you need to be able to have a solution that's going to allow you to ask questions of your data. What happens if I change this? How can I best influence future outcomes? And it's really those things that are going to really help you change the game in how you think of analytics.
Great. Robin, just as sort of an extension of that question, and if you can really maybe just for the group, because it's very diverse, if you could speak at a high level, how have you seen SAP Analytics platforms evolve over the recent times? It's become such a competitive landscape. So many new entrants into companies that are professing to be experts in analytics. With so many choices out there, Robin, and at the risk of not trying to sound biased, how would you kind of educate this vast audience here today?
I've had the pleasure of working with SAP Analytics since 1999. So as you can imagine, I have witnessed firsthand the evolution. So I started my career really as a BI developer with a customer. So I evolved into, platform administration. I've done implementations. I've done upgrades. All of that before joining SAP. So, I've seen where we've come, and what I think is really interesting in the evolution is that we're finally getting to where we said we always wanted to be. We have said for years we want self-service analytics, but for a number of reasons we haven't been able to achieve that. And really what we have now with SAP Analytics Cloud is a solution that truly does deliver upon that expectation of self-service analytics over governed data, which I think is extremely important, right? So there's a lot of tools that solve for the self-service, but haven't really leaned into how do we do that over governed data sets and trusted data sets. And, when I talked about really what type of solution should be considered, combining BI planning and predictive into one tool is really one of the exciting things about what we've done with our analytics solution. But even more importantly is that we have focused on simplicity. We have to make all of that easy and accessible to all of the users in the organization, right? So predictive, a lot of times people get scared of that. They think of data scientists and really deep statistical backgrounds. We have brought all of this capability available with the click of a button because we've infused AI and machine learning to do all of that in the background for the end user. So, that evolution has really, it's changing the game. It's changing the paradigm. It used to be we focused so much on reporting that we lost sight of the analytics. And now we truly can focus on getting insight from the data as quickly, and we don't have to pre-configure and pre-design reports and dashboards like we used to.
This really helps, Robin. Thank you. Peter, again, I mentioned before to the audience, you come from the pharma industry, but what's also unique, Peter, is that you have worked in very large environments of business. You've worked in mid-sized companies. Right now, you're navigating with a startup company. Peter, you've used SAP for quite some time. Can you describe a couple of the areas within these analytic tools that have definitively helped you to drive value from both a revenue and a cost savings perspective?
Great. Yeah, I think one of the things that Robin brought up was the availability of the data and ease of use, and that is key. Ultimately, Ken brought up the pharma industry. I think depending on the news cycle, we compete with Congress for how much people like us, which is not much. So that drives a lot of questions around data and information and what our products are and where the value is to the whole supply chain. So in the generic pharma industry, each item could have multiple transactions, right? So if we have 100,000 items that we sold, we could have 1 million plus transactions related to those. So that's on a customer, that's on an item level. Each of those areas, if you try and drive that into a QuickBooks environment or an Excel environment, you have to have access to the correct information. And frankly, you can't do it. Right? You need to collect the right information in the right type of system, and you need to be able to get it quickly and timely. And with that, you're able to look at obviously items that are causing you issues. In a commoditized market, you don't have the margins to be able to, lose 8-10% because there's duplicate transactions. There are transactions that aren't adjudicated according to your agreements, and there's simple mistakes that just happen. And even if you have a high accuracy level, 1 or 2% error rate is a material number of mistakes in your practice. So I think that the key thing that has helped in this is the collection of data, the timeliness of data, and the accuracy of the data, and the ability to get it out in a report or in a function that is not tied to a manual process in Excel. People across the organization can have access to the information that you want to provide them. They can have the same view of the information, which is very important when you're discussing revenue with the sales team. For example, a sales team will only look at an invoice price, for example. But if you have 60% of that invoice price goes out in rebates or discounts or some other type of price concession, you're talking in meetings at different price points and so on. So that always changes the discussion. It changes the contractual negotiations with your customers.
Sure.
So from that perspective, it's a huge opportunity to get everybody inside your organization on the same page, which drives consistent pricing and then allows you to look at the margins and figure out which products that are issues. I mean, ultimately, again, the generic drug industry, you have 500 or 600 SKUs. And if you have to look at things at a basket level, that does not help your bottom line. Ultimately, you'll have 20 SKUs out of that are destroying your profitability. So if you can pick those out and get to that information quickly and timely, you don't want to be in a historical nature of reporting things, 30 days after the period end. It just doesn't work. So
Sure.
I hope that helps.
No, Peter, it does. And just one thing I'm picking up on from what you just said, you're a CFO and I head up business development. So we're both on very opposite ends of the spectrum. And you made a comment before that it's important for the whole group or the whole team of all departments to get on the same page. And I can tell you, for my CFO, when he just verbalizes, ideas or comments versus sharing with me the data, it makes me much more accountable and more focused to really get in that area. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, Ken,
I'm sorry,
if
please,
you don't
no.
mind, I know you were going to jump off, but it's real important to be able to show the beginning of the conversation from a sales perspective or a business development perspective, and then how it actually ends up in the reporting of your financials. So
Absolutely.
You could show one number or you could show the other number, but everybody loses that conversation, right? If you could show both because your analytics are tied in and they're consistent between organizations within your company, the conversations go smoothly and you get to really discuss how to fix the business issue. So,
Sure, Peter.
sorry to cut you off there.
No, but I really appreciate it because I can relate. Obviously, I don't want to turn this into a sales perspective. I'm very fortunate to have David Hamilton on. David brings the system analyst perspective. And from his side, he actually comes from the manufacturing industry. And I know we have in our audience today people that manufacture goods and products as well. So, David, I'll just ask you, how has your SAP Analytics tools helped in providing accurate and timely data, especially during these stressful times where many manufacturers are being challenged by just the changing economic climate? David?
So yeah, I've been in manufacturing for over 30 years, about 16 of them with AGY, the last 16. And the first 10 years or so I spent as an engineer, manufacturing engineer on the floor. So I was consuming the data that SAP Analytics was putting out. And I can tell you from that perspective, it was incredibly important to me to be able to have reports that I could sit down when I had 10 or 15 minutes in between a meeting, that I could run a report, get the answers I needed, and move on. Or if, sometimes you never know how long you have. But it was also really nice that I knew that I could, when I had time, I could pull up I could pull up Web Intelligence, and I could do a deep dive into any of the data that I needed. About 6 years ago, I transitioned into the IT department, and I've started supporting the product from the other side.
Great.
And I can tell you from a development standpoint, we leverage the universes quite heavily. We have over 25, 27 universes that we use on a daily basis, and the value that brings, not only to the organization from say a salesman being able to have a quick report that he can pull up before he goes into a customer, and he can get their history right at his fingertips, or
Sure.
As Peter talked about from the financial side of things. But even from an applications development, we are a specialized industry. We develop a lot of our own data collection tools and process manufacturing tools that we have. A lot of it's homegrown. And I can tell you, it really frees us up knowing that with the universe structure we have, we don't have to worry about designing the back end data collection or data presentation for the users. I know that all I got to do is get the data into a table, and then I can expose that table through a universe, no matter what the source of that data was, and SAP is going to handle it. It really frees us up. It allows us to develop the floor applications much more quickly, and it's really been a time saver, especially as you mentioned, the economic times. Our company has gone through a tough year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some downsizing through attrition, and everybody's doing more. So being able to rely a little more heavily on SAP for the data presentation has been critical to our operation. Our engineers use it to diagnose all myriad of issues, whether it be quality, productivity, you name it. Every department uses it. It's really been critical in keeping us competitive in the marketplace.
No, this really helps, David. And David, you wouldn't even realize, but you are proving about the new normal as you had your dog behind you that just jumped off the bed, and I've got one of my two dogs behind me. So this is the reality that we're all living through right now.
Yeah.
If I can pivot, I want to pivot to Eugene, who I mentioned before, works for a very prominent company from a branding standpoint, Union Bay. Eugene, you very kindly are coming all the way from from Seattle, and really appreciating you getting your day started early. Eugene, I have a number of in the audience of people that really actually work in the actual IT area. And you as an IT manager, I know you interact, just as Peter said before, all departments have to come together. But just, maybe from your perspective, and if you could share with the audience how you utilize analytics in your company. You have a long-standing company, and some of the key focus areas you are emphasizing work and benefiting from Eugene as 2021 continues and as we move into the remainder of the year. Love to get your perspective, Eugene.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eugene, and I work as IT manager at Union Bay, as Ken mentioned. And I've been with the company for about 15 years. I started out as a database developer and DBA, and kind of moved up a little bit in the IT manager role. Union Bay was established in 1981, and despite every ups and downs that we had during that time, up until now, we are still doing well. And in parts because we leverage information, and we being an apparel company in apparel industry, we are heavily driven by reports. We have about 300 reports in total, or over 300 reports, and on a daily basis, about 50 different reports are being used, and out of which about a dozen reports help management, higher senior management to make decisions on a daily or hourly basis. Because of that, we were able to be competitive and actually stay in business despite all the, again, ups and downs. As I mentioned before, we would not be able to operate, simply would not be able to operate without some of the decision making that is driven by our reports. Looking into remainder of 2021 and kind of reflecting on these tough times that we had to go through, we're going to be probably looking into advanced analytics and AI and everything else that SAP has to offer to ease their job and make us better in the marketplace.
Eugene, this really, really helps. And I have a few additional questions I'll come to. But first, as the audience may remember, I mentioned that I'm also bringing somebody from my own team on the call here from Saberpoint. I really look at this guy as my technology savior. He's been with my company, and I've worked alongside him for 20 years. I want to introduce you to Raghu Prabhakar. And Raghu, you are really the one that has dealt day to day with the likes of Peter's organization, Eugene's organization, David's organization, and so many others. So besides, our existing clients, obviously, if you can speak even to, people that are on this webinar who, may be thinking about analytics, can you tell some of the SAP capabilities that customers tend to underestimate and really could potentially benefit from, as a majority of companies, as we've come to see, Raghu, really have come to us desperately in saying, how can analytics help us, especially during this economic downturn? So really from your perspective, Raghu, you're seeing it out there. I think the audience could really benefit of what you see. Raghu, I think you're muted. Raghu, just want to...
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Yeah, thanks, Raghu.
Perfect. So as we see with Peter and Eugene and David, right, talking through how they use analytics, that's what we go through every day in and day out with other customers, right? So with SAP, right, everyone tends to say that, okay, it's only for large customers, right? Whatever SAP products it is. And especially in the analytics, right, we have huge customers that are well vested in SAP Analytics, and we have newer small to medium-sized customers that are getting into SAP Analytics, right? There's a lot of functionalities with SAP Analytics platform. The customer tends to greatly benefit, whatever size you are. We talked about how he has been with large organization using SAP, and even smaller organization, right? So there are a lot of great benefits, and Robin talked about a lot of these already. How easy it is to integrate various types of data. We talked about, Eugene talked about retail data, pharma data, right? Dave talked about how critical it is for the manufacturing process. So it's easy to integrate all types of data into the applications, very easy, right? And newer concepts, newer functionalities that Robin touched on, smart discovery, data insights, predictive analytics, even they are available even for small organization, right? With the technology enhancements that is available on the cloud with SAP Analytics, those are some of the newer functionalities that will great benefit our customers. Visualization, data analytics. Everyone wants to see flashy dashboards, just not the standard reporting. It's not enough anymore, right? You want organization to be self-sufficient to create their own dashboard right in their with their existing resources, right? Personalization, that's very important right now. And it has to be a very balanced, basic, innovative interface that makes SAP Analytics easy for business users to work with, especially in these critical times with limited resources, very little IT support, which was traditionally more available to an organization with CFOs and right that are already available. Now it's very important that you have to utilize the platform, the solution in order for an organization to be self-sufficient in day to day. And especially with economic downturn, business leaders in various organizations are being forced to work with very limited resources. Users are always looking for platform that is quick, easy, and that they can set up and maintain by themselves, right?
Raghu, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm just going to ask an additional question which ties right into that. I'll be a little more specific.
Yep.
Everyone is talking about cloud, and many people are familiar with on-premise. Raghu, from your perspective, and we've seen such an uptick in people asking for different types of analytics. Now that some people are obviously had been invested in more of a on-premise solution, where others are opting for the cloud. Can you kind of help us just from a trend standpoint of what you're seeing out there? Why do some companies still believe they need on-premise, and why are many at this point asking about cloud solutions?
Yep, excellent question, Ken. So SAP Analytics, right, has the advantage of being deployable as an on-premise solution, cloud-based solution, or a hybrid platform, right? It's extraordinarily integratable and powerful, right? It's very fewer tools out there that can provide this deployment option, be it on-premise, cloud, or hybrid. Now, when you talk about legacy SAP Analytics customer, whether you be it a Crystal Reports customer, a business object customer, had only the option in the past of deploying on-premise solution, right? So a lot of these customers tend to upgrade to newer version by staying in the same on-premise version, utilizing their existing resources and infrastructure they already have in place. But what is happening right now is with a lot of innovation that is happening on the cloud, with a lot of predictive and AI machine learning capabilities, a lot of these customers, many of these same on-premise customers are taking the leap to the cloud, or at least adopting to a more of a hybrid model, combining both on-premise and cloud. We are seeing this over and over again, where traditional on-premise customers are moving over to the cloud, first by leveraging and keeping their existing on-premise infrastructure, but also hybrid model, adopting to the cloud where they can utilize the enhanced functionalities, a lot of innovation that's happening, Ken.
Great. This really helps, Raghu. And, Robin, with this in mind, and I want to kind of stay on that topic, I don't want to ask really a repetitive question, but, Raghu and I only have our frame of reference from the clients that we deal with. You at SAP deal with the whole spectrum of clients. Robin, can you weigh in on hybrid analytics? And again, what you're seeing specifically from on-prem versus more of cloud solutions. I think the whole audience here could really, really benefit to what you as an overall company are actually seeing and dealing with every day. Thanks, Robin.
Absolutely, Ken. So, Raghu really set this up nicely for me. At the core of SAP's analytics strategy is hybrid, and that's really evidenced in the 4.3 release of business objects. If you've taken a look at what we delivered in 4.3, one of the key pillars was around hybrid enablers, because we want customers that have really enjoyed the benefits of the on-premise solution to be able to take advantage of these new innovations that we're delivering in SAP Analytics Cloud, but to do so in a way that's non-disruptive. So we've always had the ability for you to connect to your trusted universe data source, right? So there's a lot of investment in a lot of companies that have gone into the development of these universes. So one of the key ways that we want you to be able to take advantage of Analytics Cloud is to be able to connect directly to that and take advantage of that resource, which also, again, gives you that advantage of you have trusted information. I'm going to be seeing the same numbers in Analytics Cloud that I see if I'm executing a Webby report. We've also added additional things that I think are really key to helping you make this journey towards the cloud. One is being able to surface a Webby report as a data source. So again, I have a long history of business objects. I know how much intelligence is built into the Webby report layer, right? A lot of calculations are done there, data blending, a lot of different things, and being able to surface that as a data source is really important. And then from an enterprise perspective, focusing on things like building an API that allows you to share your CMC security information from your on-premise to the cloud solution. So you have that more seamless environment of being able to onboard users into your SAP Analytics Cloud. All of this to say that we have made a very conscious decision to help our customers be able to take advantage of the new innovations as quickly as possible and as non-disruptive as possible. The other thing that I think is interesting is a question I get a lot is, are there places where I still need on-premise versus a cloud solution, right? And what's really exciting about a cloud solution is that we are able to innovate rapidly, right? We are delivering new innovations to our customers on a quarterly basis. And because it is a SaaS solution, you're immediately able to take advantage of that. So, if we look, a couple of years back, I would have said, yeah, there's probably some gaps from a functionality perspective that would necessitate staying with an on-premise solution for a while. That it is really interesting, though, that we are rapidly closing those gaps. So some new features that are available that are probably the top reasons people stay with on-premise, things like scheduling and distribution of data, publications, that is now available in Analytics Cloud. Even things like making those publications easier to consume, like section breaks, that is now available as well. And then the last feature that I always hear, and it's probably the bane of all of our existence when it comes to data and analytics, is the whole Excel, right? Everybody wants Excel. Yes. So one of our big hybrid enablers that we continue to have with Analytics Cloud is the analysis office, right? Because there will always be that constituency that's going to feel much more comfortable doing pivoting in Excel. And we want those capabilities, again, off those same trusted data sources. So all of that to say that, we recognize that it's a journey to get there, but we're really doing everything we can to help make that a smoother transition for you.
This is great, Robin. And very, very insightful. I can relate to what you're saying. I use as an example, I have a number of law firm clients that, really at this point really feel very much they want to stay in control of their data. But I think you're giving some great insight of, where, as I said, even firms such as that really could benefit from the cloud. So very, very, very much appreciated. With that, I'm going to go into a different area, and I'm going to come back to you, Peter. You, as I mentioned, have joined a very promising startup company. And from my vantage point, Peter, and I know the work that Raghu has done with you, is that it's all about really creating custom reports. You've done it in other companies. As you come into this company, in this environment, will you lean a lot on creating custom reports? And one example in particular, Peter, I will give you. I always admired how you championed really trying to create accuracy in a gross versus net environment from a financial perspective. So if you can kind of wrap all that together to maybe give the audience, and I have a number of financial people on here, just really how custom reports become so critical in your environment.
You gave me an easy one there, Ken. So I think it's real important to understand where you are in the trajectory of your growth of your organization, right? Ultimately, especially in a startup, you might not know what you need. What you need now might not be the same as 6 months down the road or a year down the road. So while we'll talk about the customization at the important thing is the access to information and how this integrates with your ERP. And there are best practices that are built into these systems that allow you to have, thought leaders in other companies already have a framework of what to look at. And then you can customize it and you can tailor it to your own thought process. But the ability to tie into, there are smarter people. Every room you walk into, there should always be smarter people than you. So, you're, again, having access to that framework and, it jumpstarts your thought process and how do you get to where you need to go to, and the ability to say, okay, 6 weeks ago, I didn't need to look at this, but now I need to look at this as a growing organization, or, you bring in the right thought talent in a different group of your organization, and they're your customers from a finance perspective, right? So you have to be able to provide the information. So ultimately again, having that basis and having that collection of information available so that you can manipulate it the way you need to at different points in your trajectory is a huge framework. And then again, I would say, Robin, I heard you mention everybody wants Excel, but I hate when information doesn't match and everybody slips a zero and all of a sudden you're talking about 5 million versus 50 million. So again, having all the data coming from the same place and the accuracy around all of the transactions that run through a system and everybody has different hands on, the fact that it's going to be all consistent across who you talk to, it is a huge opportunity. You find mistakes very quickly and you resolve them, and it's great for communication, which is obviously why you guys are on the phone, and communication and dissemination of ideas is what makes a successful organization. So
this helps, Peter. Thank you. And David, as you conveyed to the audience, in AGY, that's a long tenured company. So I know you absolutely are relying on your custom reports. But just to add to that, David, how important are your SAP analytics to be embedded within the company, especially since you focus on mostly process manufacturing and a little bit of discrete manufacturing? Let's see if you're unmuted.
Yep, I just
there you go, David.
So yeah, we rely very heavily on the reports. I was doing a little research before this. We have almost 900 standard reports that are available to our users at any time. Probably 20% of those are scheduled and are published on some frequency, some daily, some weekly, some monthly. But it's incredibly important to us. Additionally, we probably have another 500 or 600, I would estimate, ad hoc reports that our users, our engineers, even we have a couple of vice presidents that are probably some of the biggest power users we have.
Wow.
Our vice president of finance, our vice president of science and technology, they're constantly writing reports to dig in and spin information differently. So it's unbelievably important for us to have the information embedded, and that doesn't even talk to from say the quality and the productivity side of things. Our supervisors on the floor rely on the information that we can get to them through SAP for labor efficiency, for attendance, and those kind of things. Those are all reports we've been able to provide. Our quality department, or really the engineers, SAP allows us to stitch all the data together that we have from the manufacturing process to be able to tell exactly which machines and which people touched a product. So, and additionally, which other pieces of which other bobbins of yarn are related to other ones. So we have complete genealogy. We can tell, mother, father, grandfather,
Wow.
sisters and brothers of every piece of yarn on the floor. And so without the embedded analytics, it would take us so much longer to perform root cause analysis
Mm.
and correct problems on the floor, or issues before they become problems. Our reaction time is so much quicker. When I got there 16 years ago, we were taking pieces of paper off the pieces of equipment in the on the shop floor, adding up numbers in Excel. And now we've progressed to that's all in data collected automatically on the floor, and we use SAP to put it all together, stitch the whole story together, and give one unified answer, or one unified data set, however you want to call it. And it's just been critical.
This helps, David. And Eugene, you also mentioned before about 300 plus reports. But my question a little bit more specifically is how does SAP Analytics meet your needs for consolidating data from various sources, whether it's SAP, non-SAP? Because really, at the end of the day, and as we all say in analytics, it's all about trying to achieve the single source of truth. So, Eugene, could you weigh in on that?
Yes, and my example would be very similar to Dave's example. Coming from the data background, I always say bad data is worse than no data. So we are, I would much more prefer no data. If you can imagine that there's a lot of steps to ship the product or design, develop, and ship the product. I'm talking about the apparel industry, the pair of jeans that we all know. We have multiple systems that are connected. We basically, or we mostly Oracle shop, but on a weekly basis, we receive sell-through reports from our retail stores, and that is a very, very critical information in order for us to make decisions for future shipments and design and development. And so our ERP system is connected to, so imagine that the sell-through data comes in an Excel spreadsheet, it gets processed and gets embedded into our ERP system, which is connecting through interfaces into our warehouse management system. And then also the ERP system is connected to our financials data where we're on Oracle Financials. So having all these systems be connected and have a single source of truth, like you were mentioning, is
Yes.
absolutely critical. And that helps us a lot on a daily basis. That's all I can say.
Very, very, what do you call it? And Raghu, we talk about it all the time. Raghu, just for the audience, I know that we've invited people that, are with very long tenured companies.
Mm-hmm.
We have companies that are in QuickBooks environments and really just with very limited data. Raghu, before, we start to get to some questions, if the audience has any, can you speak a little to how we work with SAP to really try and make the process of implementation and the change management and the education that a potential client may need much easier? And if you can kind of give perspective of how that evolves in the short term and then clients that move to the midterm and long term. So you can kind of wrap together I think really what I'm asking you, Raghu, is how do we try and make it simple based on the tools that SAP creates for us?
Yep. So let me attack your first question, Ken. Right? You asked how Saberpoint is involved with working with SAP and provide services to our customers. So Saberpoint is one of the few SAP Analytics partners that can help customers with all three deployment options, be it an on-premise setup, legacy on-premise setup, cloud, or a hybrid approach that Robin talked about. We have data and analytics consultants that have extensive experience working with cloud analytics and predictive analytics that we talked about, as well as working with legacy SAP Analytics products, Crystal reports, an older version of Business Object, and also, more importantly, migrating them to a newer version of Business Object or migrating them to the cloud, right? What we talked about. Now, SAP Solutions today supports our customers to be self-sufficient, right? We talked about that and build their own data model. So in case where they need any assistance with complex data modeling, we're able to leverage our in-house technology team specializing in varied data sources. Now, Eugene talked about how varied his data sources are, be it Oracle or in-house applications, right? Pharma, what Peter talked about, Pharma data as well. So we had varied data sources, and we know that the application, the platform can support multiple heterogeneous data. But how we help our customers, we utilize our in-house technology team having knowledge of ERP data, utilizing our ERP team, CRM data, right, to help and guide our customers with their data modeling. Now, that is crucial because we want, I think everyone talked about it in their own way. How do we bring all different types of data to form that single source of truth? In order to do that, you will have to have a knowledge of the data. Mostly our customers will be self-sufficient and do that themselves. But in case they need our assistance, we're always there to support them. And when we talk about how SAP Analytics in the short, mid, and long term, you have to realize. I think it was Peter who touched base on it a little bit as well, right? You have to understand where you are in the analytics journey as an organization. It's very important to understand the analytics maturity, right, in your organization. In terms of analytics maturity, you're talking about, do you have clean data, right? Eugene hit nail on the head. It's better to have no data than incorrect data, right? You need to start with clean data, right? And that's your starting point on the analytics curve. You want to start making sure you have the crawl, walk, run model set up in your organization. By crawl, I'm talking about you first want to make sure you have clean data and also be capable of analyzing the trends that is happening today. Right? Traditional BI. You want to make sure a platform is, and most of the platforms out there do support. Now, but also what is important is when you are already in the crawl walk stage and you want to go to the run model, right? You want to make sure your platform can support the predict, act, AI, and all those additional enhanced features, right? It's very important because when you adopt into a platform, you want to look at long term, can the platform support and provide you the capabilities that you want to be, predict and act stage? How do you optimize, not only see what has happened, you want to know why it happened and what will happen in using the enhanced tools, right? So you want to make sure when you're looking at a platform, when you adopt into a platform, you look at those aspects as well. And you want to, at the same time, ensure you have the tools to enable your organization to be self-sufficient with reporting and dashboarding.
Good. And Raghu, it's interesting. And we're hitting the top of the hour. We have a shy audience, so there hasn't been a lot of questions on the chat. But Robin, maybe very quickly, if you can kind of dovetail off of Raghu, but I'll ask it in a different way. You have so many different types of analytics tools that are offered to clients through SAP. How, from your opinion, can a company best make the optimal decision on how best to utilize the tools that are right for them and not really overkill it with too many different types of things to try and do all at the same time?
That's a great question, Ken. And every company is different. And as Raghu mentioned, their maturity level and their strategies are different, and that's going to dictate a lot. But one commonality that I see, so we'll just make this a little bit generic, is that companies that best utilize their data and analyze that data are best positioned to meet their strategic goals. So one of the keys to doing that is really disseminating the decision making, or actually not decision making, but the process by which you're doing insight identification, actionable information, those types of things. The further you can disseminate that into the organization, the better off you're going to be. So, gone are the days when we can afford the luxury of having a small centralized ownership of building out reports and expecting that to be sufficient. If COVID taught us anything, it's that we need more data and more users analyzing the data to be able to really make sure that we are making the right decisions at the right time. So, when you're choosing your tools to utilize, you want to make sure that you're meeting your users where they're at. So I love Raghu's analogy with the crawl, walk, run, right? And it's one thing to kind of rate your organization of where you are on that particular journey. But you have pockets in your organization, let's be honest, that are at crawl, and another pocket that is at run. So being able to lean into that and making sure that you have the appropriate technologies to meet them where they are is really important. We've always said BI is about the right data to the right people at the right time. And it's really about and giving them the right functionality is as important, right?
Great. This helps, Robin. And again, I could just continue. I have so many more questions, but I'm going to just try and squeeze in one more question. And as I love to do, I'm going to put Peter on the spot. Peter, actually a good question that I think you can bring. As mentioned, a lot of the clients that we support are in startup mode. We're in the early stages of their growth. And the big buzzword always for startup and whatever is how do we scale? Peter, I'll just ask you at a very, very high level, because you've been in this environment so many times. What would you say would be the best advice to companies that are growing relatively fast, but really know they need to really grow more intelligently rather than haphazardly to scale in these early stages? Any insight you might want to give, or cautions in other areas, please?
Sure. All right, Ken. I think, a lot of people in the startup world, it takes a different type of personality, right? I mean, you have to be able to survive and make do with limited resources. I always hear, it's a startup. We'll muddle through it, and then the next thing is, well, if we hit our goals, it'll be a great problem to have, because then that's a concern for down the road, and we've really hit our numbers. And really, what I really actually see that as a problem, right? I mean, you have to be ahead of where you are in your trajectory,
yep.
Right? And you have to be able to have data to answer the next set of questions that are coming, right? I know I sit in meetings and the questions asked, and I know that it's going to lead to the next 3 questions. And if you don't have the answers to that, as a finance guy in a startup, the next CFO will be the one that solves that problem, right? So I think the key thing is to not get comfortable with making do. It's to get ahead of the thought process, build out the information collection, and be able to answer the questions are going to come. Even if you don't think they're needed right now, people are going to get there. And I think Robin brought up the point that there are different levels of walk, run, crawl in an organization. And
yes.
You need to keep the organization moving at the same pace. You frankly don't want to burn out your best people, because there are organizations that they're dragging along, and they're running, and other people are crawling or not even walking yet. So again, you're going to get tasked with providing information and collecting it the right way. And the only way to do that is to be focused on the analytics and stay ahead of the curve. So recommendation is, while it might be cheaper and easier, to go with a simpler solution, you will get backed up very quickly. You'll be behind the backlog. And like I said, I've lived through it. You say, okay, I can make do, and then somebody else is solving the problem because you were not quite up to speed. So recommendation is get out, get the best tools you can get the best information you can collect, and learn how to carve it up. Otherwise, somebody else will have your job, especially when you don't even have to compete geographically anymore. Somebody who can be across the country, like everybody on this call, somebody can be across the country and doing the same thing, and you don't have to be in the office anymore.
It's true.
So that's my advice.
Peter, good final thoughts, I think, for the audience. Jen, before I turn it back to you, I'd be remiss, first and foremost, we seem to have a very, as I said, either a very captive audience or a very shy audience, because we didn't seem to have any Q&A questions come through. But if there are, by all means, you can email myself or Raghu or others. But most importantly, too, I want to thank you, Robin. I want to thank you, Peter, Dave, Eugene, and Raghu for joining me as well. Just cannot thank you enough for your time. I think you really helped to bring some great perspective to a number of people that are kind of debating where they want to go with their analytics or how to get started with analytics. And I think this will be really helpful. I think with that, Jen, I'll turn it back to you. And I think from our side, I think we covered a lot.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You can access the event recording at the same location you used to join today. I'd like to extend a thank you to all of our presenters. This concludes today's event, and you may now disconnect after completing the short survey that will pop up shortly. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.